Welcome to this exciting discussion on the topic of data quality for unstructured data. Many of us have grown up reading the books written by Bill Inmon. He is the father of data warehousing. I'm so delighted that we get an opportunity to talk to him about his role. In fact, when I reached out to him, I was surprised when he said he is equally passionate about the space of unstructured data as he is about data warehouses. So here we are. Bill, I am so delighted that you have joined this discussion and we get an opportunity to understand from you the space of unstructured data and what's happening in terms of data quality.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Do you want to introduce yourself? Because I see you have the Datavox logo behind you. So what is Datavox?
Datavox is a company that reads textual information and turns it into a database. It's a commercial product that is efficient, is simple to use, and is inexpensive.
Very nice. So we will talk more about unstructured data, but before we even jump into the space, I would love for you to set a baseline as to what exactly is unstructured data. Where does it come from? How is it different from structured data?
Okay, let me go back to my beginnings. Uh, about 22 years ago, I was sitting down with working on data warehousing, and I had this strange question that I asked myself, and that
Mhm.
question is, when you look at the corporation and you look at a data warehouse, which I certainly advocate people do, uh, you're not really looking at the data of the corporation because 90% or more of the data in the corporation is in the form of text. And so I said, gee, why aren't people using text? And I thought that's an interesting question. And my first reaction was, well, maybe there's not really anything valuable in text. And we quickly found out that wasn't the case at all. That there's a lot of very valuable information wrapped up in the form of text, but corporations, for a variety of reasons, just don't use that text. And so that was the start of my journey on becoming intrigued with text. Uh, Text. Now, when you look at the topic of unstructured data covers a lot of territory. Unstructured data is more than text. Unstructured data is analog data, is a wide variety of data. However, in terms of business usefulness, it's the textual portion of unstructured data that is the most valuable and important usage. So now, when it comes to unstructured data or text, there are a lot of obstacles to overcome. Let me tell you the first and simplest obstacle to overcome. And this is going to sound strange, but I'm telling you it's true, is being able to read the text. And you say, what do you mean be able to read the text? Well, some of the text that you're interested in is in the form of voice. Some of the text that you're interested in is in the form of print. Some of the text that you're interested in is in a database. Some of the text you're interested in is on the internet. And so going to finding and transcribing these sources of data is not a trivial thing to do. It's got to be done if you're going to be working with text, but it is not a simple subject. Now, speaking of quality of data, one of the interesting things that you may or may not know is that when you do voice transcription, that is, when somebody does a recording and you take the recording and put the recording into the form of text, there is no such thing as perfect quality. That I don't care what service you get however you do it, there's always some misinterpretation of the spoken word. Now, certain technologies work better than other technologies, and if you get 95% accuracy, that's very good out of a machine. But If you expect to get 100% perfection out of voice transcription, you're going to be disappointed because it doesn't exist. So anyway, that's a little bit about the first obstacle you face when you go into the world of text is even being able to access the text. Oh, another thing, email. Email is already in the form of electronic text. However, I don't know if you've ever looked at an email as the system sees it, but an email comes with, number one, a tremendous amount of system overhead that has no meaning to you or your user. The second thing with email is a lot of email is spam, and and you don't want spam. Spam doesn't do you any good. So with email, you've got to filter out the data that is meaningless to you in email. And that's just one example of what I mean by being able to access the data in the first place. Um, I can go on
Yeah.
when it comes to
Yes.
data quality
Very valuable.
in text has a different meaning than it does in the structured world.
Hmm.
Let me give you an example.
Okay.
I'm sitting here looking at my computer and I'm looking at the word Zoom. Zoom is spelled ZOOM. What if you're dealing with text and somebody has spelled Zoom as ZAAM? Now that's a misspelling of Zoom. You know it. I know everybody knows it. But when it comes to text, you can't change text even when it's incorrect. I can give you examples where it's even against the law to do that. So
Hmm.
when somebody writes something, you've got to accept it even when you know it's incorrect. And that's a confusion because you say, well, gee, I see the word Zoom spelled as ZAAM. I'm going to correct it. No, you're not. Not in the world of text. You've
Yeah.
got to leave it exactly as found. And so
Yeah.
that's one difference between what is meant by data quality in the world of text.
I
Uh,
was I was just thinking, by the way, picking on your Zoom example, if you
yes.
did data quality on the audio recording of what we are doing right now, for a
Mhm.
Britisher, it would be like, no, no, you spelled it wrong. It's ZOOM.
Well, that's because the British don't know how to spell. So
Okay, that's a different topic for a different.
that's a that's a
Uh,
different topic.
yes.
Uh, a second major difference between text and structured data that has an effect on quality is context. When you're dealing with text, it's mandatory that you also have context. And if you don't have context, you will misinterpret the meaning of what the text means. Let me give you a simple example. Let's take the word fire. If I ask you, what does the word fire mean? Uh, I'm going to tell you right now, you can't answer that question. Why? Because you don't know the context. Fire could mean that the building I'm in right now is burning. That's a
Hmm.
conflagration, and that's one fire. Another fire is I have a pistol in my hand, I take it out, and I pull the trigger. I've now fired the gun. Another meaning of fire is when your boss comes in and says, "Well, I'm dissatisfied with your work. I'm going to fire you." So if I
Okay.
ask you the meaning of the word fire without context, you don't know what it means.
Correct.
And our language is filled with I mean that's not just one word, not all words, but most words in the English language require any language require
Yeah.
context. And
Yes.
so if you don't have context, you text is meaningless. And you will, in terms of data quality, I guarantee you're going to make
Hmm.
a wrong interpretation of, of data quality when you're dealing with text.
So,
A third
yeah.
example of data quality is, and I'm not sure this is really data quality, but it's a related topic, is that people that are dealing with the structured world are used to keys. They're used to saying, this is his social security number. This is his passport number. This is his vehicle identification number. We're used to keys. You go to text, normally you don't have those keys. People don't talk in terms of keys. Oh, I don't know. Every now and then somebody does mention the key, but that's almost a random thing. When it comes to normal conversations, people talk about whatever they talk about, but they don't have keys. So if you are depending on meaning for your data coming from a key, you're in the wrong place because under normal circumstances, text doesn't have keys.
Mm,
One other confusion that is worth mentioning is one of the things about text is text comes in different languages.
mm,
There's Spanish,
certainly.
there's English, Portuguese, French, German, Mandarin, Kanji. There. If I'm not mistaken, I read in today's world there are over 270 different languages that are being spoken on this earth today. Well, and you can translate those languages, but when you do, you stand the very real chance that your your translation is not going to be correct. And so there's another way in which data quality becomes an issue when dealing with text. So those are some of the issues that you face. The major one is people have the notion that when they find something that's incorrect, they should go in and correct it. And I'm going to tell you right now, you can't do that with text.
I have another definition of the word fire. Since you are on fire talking about your passionate topic,
Yes.
so that's a new definition. I want to ask you the next question, which is what would be a potential impact of a poor data quality on business or decision-making process in this case?
It can be disastrous. It's not always disastrous, but it can be disastrous because uh, I'm trying to think of some famous. I know one famous example when Napoleon was defeated by Wellington in Napoleonic Wars.
Hmm.
They sent a message across the English Channel. Um, and there was fog that day, and so they got the first two words. They said Wellington defeat, and all of the people in England went into a panic because, oh my gosh, Wellington has lost to
Napoleon.
Napoleon. But when the fog cleared, they completed the message and said Wellington defeated Napoleon at Waterloo. And so for a few minutes the whole of England was in a panic because
Hmm.
they thought Napoleon was soon going to be invading their country, and so now there are many other cases where a misinterpretation of what's being said can lead to. I'll give you another example. When doctors write notes about a
Hmm.
patient, they check for both conditions they find and conditions they don't found. And so in a doctor's note, the doctor could say cancer not found. But if the word not is in there, it would say cancer is found when cancer really hasn't been found. And that too can be disastrous. So you've got to get text right. You've got to get it completely done. You've got to get it accurately done. You've got to know the context. And then once you've done that, then you have something that's very valuable. But if you don't have that, you have a disaster on your hands.
I have a very interesting example. Somebody sent me an email a few days ago. They were talking about a company, end user company using a product, but in the rush, that using became U and S got interposed,
Soon,
became sui. And I'm like
right?
shocked. Why this? Yeah, but it was, yes. So Bill, I love these examples. I had no idea about the Napoleonic War example you gave. So thank you for sharing that. So now the question that begs is that what techniques should we think about for cleaning or improving data quality of unstructured data?
At the heart of understanding most text. Okay, as we've discussed earlier, there's not one way to deal with text. There are many ways you have to deal with text.
Hmm,
However, the primary way that you unravel text is through what are called ontologies and taxonomies. An ontology is nothing, in our definition, is nothing more than a collection of ontology of taxonomies. And a taxonomy is nothing more than a collection of words relating to a given topic. Let
hmm,
me give you a simple example of a taxonomy. Suppose I have a taxonomy for a tree. A tree could be a pine tree, it could be a pecan tree, it could be a cherry tree, it could be a peach tree. There are lots of different kinds of
hmm,
trees. So when I mention when I'm doing my contextual disambiguation and I see the word pecan, I think of a pecan tree. So and there's taxonomies for everything.
hmm,
Cars. A car can be a Ford, can be a Volkswagen, can be a Ferrari, a Porsche, a Honda, a Toyota, and so the way to enhance, the way to make your interpretation of text as accurate as you can is to have two things. Number one, you need to have the right taxonomies, and your taxonomy needs to be complete and accurate. And as
hmm,
long as your taxonomy is complete and now there's something interesting that goes in here, and this goes with text. Do you ever have a truly complete taxonomy? And it's been my experience that there's no such thing as a complete taxonomy.
hmm,
That when you start to take class, I don't know. I know a few examples of complete taxonomies, but they're very rare. For the most part, you could name different types of cars. You could name cars that once existed but don't exist.
hmm,
You could name trees. You could name a tree that they have in Africa, the baobab tree, which I can't pronounce, but they have trees in
yeah,
Africa that you wouldn't think of. And so, one of the interesting things about dealing with text is uh, there is always a margin for error.
hmm.
That if you think you're going to get it done perfectly, you're not. If you're going to get your work done adequately and in a usable fashion, you can certainly do that. But perfection, I used to work with a lady, wonderful lady, but she was a perfectionist, and she and I she would say, Bill, there's more that should go in. I said, yes, I know there's more things should go in there, but they're not likely to be used. And she
Hmm.
says, yeah, but it's still not right. And so perfection, oh, if you, it's been our experience, if you get 95% of the collection and interpretation of your text done properly, you've done a really good job. If you get 5% done improperly, you have to live with that.
So,
So
yeah. So, Bill, I want to ask, use some examples and see how do we create this taxonomy. So, let's say in my organization, I have 10 years of SEC filings. I have 10 Ks and all these things, and I now want to do some analysis on this text PDF documents. So, but they're 10Ks, so we know the format. But the question that I have for you is, how are there tools, techniques available that allow me to create a taxonomy on these 10Ks And then are there tools to determine there are like 95% is correct, but there are 5% errors or whatever it may be? How do I detect those errors and fix them?
Uh, you've asked a very difficult question, and I'm going to give you the best answer that I can.
Okay.
Are there ways to determine the contents of a file of 10Ks? The answer is yes, indeed, there are.
Hmm.
The classical way to do it is NLP. I do not recommend NLP
So
we've
natural language
seen
processing.
natural language processing. We've seen
Okay.
organization after organization
Hmm.
try to use NLP, and
Hmm.
we call it getting lost in the forest. That
Hmm.
over and over, people that try to use NLP end up spending huge amounts of time, huge amounts of money, and come out with nothing.
Hmm.
Um, in my company, Datavox, when we first started, we tried to use NLP, and then we decided that that wasn't going to work. And so now what I'm describing to you is a 22-year
Hmm.
journey. So we then said, well, let's figure out how to go find out what's in your file of 10Ks.
Hmm.
And we had to do it by trial and error because there was nothing that we could find that told us how to do it.
Hmm.
Um, Having stated that, and today we have a brutally efficient, brutally accurate way of reading your file, giving you what you want. It's taken us 22 years to figure out how to do it, and I really can't discuss the techniques that we use because we use some very innovative, very novel techniques, and and I'm just going to tell you, do those techniques exist? Uh, I'm happy to demonstrate them for you.
Hmm.
Yes, they do exist, but I'm not at liberty to describe how we do it.
I see, got it. Okay. So if I may ask, do you use the new large language models at all, or you're doing it without LLMs?
We have our own version of large language
Oh,
models.
very
And
interesting.
we've
Okay.
been doing large language models long before there were ever large language models.
Hmm.
We recognize we've been doing them for 20 years time. And it's really in the large language module, our version of large language modules, that we have our own proprietary techniques. But uh, uh, just yesterday, I was talking to an organization that's trying to use classical large language modeling, and they're very nice people that I listen to, and I can tell you they're never going to achieve what they want to achieve. They are lost in the forest.
You had also mentioned in our previous conversation that there's 67 different algorithms to identify data quality problems for unstructured data. Can you talk about it? Is that uh,
Sure. Now that I can talk about.
okay?
Let me give you a couple of examples. One example is proximity analysis. If I
Mhm.
were to say to you the Dallas Cowboys, you would probably think of a football team in Dallas, Texas. That because that's who people think of as the Dallas Cowboys. But if I were to be talking with you about Dallas, you would be thinking about a city in Texas, and if I were to talk to you about a cowboy, you would be
Mhm.
thinking about a man on a horse with a hat and a rope. That's
Mhm.
probably what you would be thinking about. So the proximity of words together makes is one of the forms of context. That's one of the forms of context, and you've got to be able to distinguish, but when proximity is important and plays a role. As a second example, take the word color, COLOR. In America, we spell the word color
Mhm.
COLOR, but in England, they spell the word COLOUR. It's the
Correct.
same thing, but it is spelled differently. You've got
Mhm.
to be able, in terms of your algorithms, to account for the differences between uh, um, but between the types of words. And those examples that I gave are actually two small examples. There are many, many more examples. Let me give you the most challenging thing, at least the one we found the most challenging. How do you read a document and know that a person's name is a person's name?
Hmm.
And
Good
and
question.
and and we know how to do that, but it took us a lot of work to figure out how to do that. So uh, because you can have contracts, John Smith, Mary Jones, Tom Wilson, Edith Abernathy. How do you know when you're reading the document that this is a name? And 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 uh, again, we have our own proprietary ways of understanding that, but you've got to be able to understand when you run across a person's name. So
Yeah.
those are just three of the 67 different. And again, some of the algorithms are very small. Some of the algorithms are not difficult at all. Other of the algorithms are very difficult and very involved.
So, Bill, for companies that don't have Datavox, are there
Right.
some best practices they should be looking into to maintain high quality unstructured data?
We have not found a commercially viable product in the marketplace other than the one that we have. There are other products in the marketplace that I'm aware of, but in terms of doing things inexpensively,
Mhm.
quickly, and simply, we haven't found one. The only other alternative, and I recognize this is not a good alternative, but the only other alternative is to try to do it manually. But
Hmm.
in the face of the volumes of data that people are facing, doing it manually is not that's not a good answer, but it's the only other answer that I know.
So, is there a role for AI to help improve quality for unstructured data?
Absolutely, there's a role for it. AI has great potential
Mhm.
and ought to be used. Um, I would caution you when you're using AI, you've got to look for business value because a
Hmm.
lot of AI really doesn't provide, at least as far as we can tell, great business value. Now, it may in the future, but today there's a phrase we use for technologies. AI today is a technology looking for a problem,
Hmm.
but yes, there's great promise in AI.
That's great. So we've talked quite a bit about tools, technologies, best practices, AI, but I want to change directions for a bit and talk about the organization. What kind of organization should be used for unstructured data? We spend decades talking about structured data and organizing that. But is this a business or IT function? And how do we not end up with bottleneck? Because, like you said, most of the data in organizations is actually text data, which we are not leveraging. So, what are some organizational thoughts you can share with us?
I get asked this question frequently, and here's
Hmm.
what I tell people. I said, every organization that uses language ought to be using a form of textual analytics. And you say, gee, an organization uses language, that's everybody. That's the
Hmm.
government. That's insurance companies. That's banks. That's That's everybody. And there are many applications for the usage of text. Let me give you one of the most obvious and simple ones and most powerful ones that there is. Uh, when you go into a library to find a book, what do? You don't go to the stacks and start to go from one stack
No.
to the next stack. You go to the card catalog. You go to the
Hmm.
card catalog, you
Yeah.
find what you're looking for, then you know right where to go. And that's
Hmm.
an efficient, easy way to go to what you do in the library. When you go to your insurance company or your bank
Hmm.
or any company that's been around, and you say, okay, we need to find the policy that Mr. Smith had back in 1972. We need to find it. Says, oh my gosh, we've got millions of documents, and we can't find it. What do organizations, every organization need? They need a document card catalog. And in doing so, there's a lot of things that a document card catalog can do for you. Number one, it can help you find things. Number two, it can help you look from document to document. You say, gee, I found this policy that has this information. What other policies have this information? And we don't have that information in a
Mhm.
database. We have it on documents. So when you ask what organizations need to do
Hmm.
textual analytics, the answer is some more, some less, but every organization. And by the way, that's the tip. Let me give you one other example: medical records. Uh, uh, Suppose you're a researcher, a
Mhm.
doctor researcher, and you're looking to study COVID or diabetes or heart disease or cancer or any of those horrible diseases. Suppose that you're looking for. Do you want to, how do you do this? Well, you said, gee, I've got all of these medical records, but guess what? These medical records are in the form of text.
Hmm.
And and in order to study cancer or COVID or kidney disease or any of them, you can't look at one patient. You've got to look at 100,000 or even 1 million patients. And you can't do that if your medical records are in the form of text. You've got to have a database definition and structure in order to be able to do the analysis that you want. But whether it's a card catalog, whether it's medical records, I can go on.
Yeah.
I really can go on and answer this question for the next
Yeah.
week.
But this is very interesting point that you raised, because earlier on you said one big challenge at the beginning of this podcast was on extract understanding what is that, so the type of unstructured data and parsing it. So what you're saying is that unstructured data, text, let's say, has all of this data. So you need to extract the entities, store it into a structured format, then you can use it. But that structure, that extracting entities could also be vector embeddings, which you can also store. So you can
Yep.
store both. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that is correct.
Okay.
That is absolutely correct. And you need
So
to do that if you're going
yeah.
to do analysis.
Yes. Okay. So to do analysis, you need to turn unstructured data into some structure, a semblance of structure, so then you can do your analysis.
Yes.
Are there any industries, you mentioned healthcare just a couple of times, any industries or any use cases that you've seen that have been hugely successful in leveraging unstructured data?
Well, we are working right now with some insurance companies
Hmm.
and a government agency, not the United States government, but another foreign government agency on those very issues and very items. Um, and they're doing in the case of the people we're working with, they're interested in the card catalog. They want to know what data is in my documents, and so that's what they're doing. So yes, there are people that are doing this today.
So I know for proprietary reasons, you cannot talk too much about the actual implementations that you are doing. But can you generalize into some key lessons learned in this process that you didn't expect, and now you're like, wow, next time this is what we should do better?
I'll tell you one thing I learned,
Hmm.
a hard lesson I learned. When we first had a minimally viable product, we
Mhm.
thought that the technicians of the world were going to be interested in this.
Hmm.
And over again, technicians absolutely rejected the
Oh.
thought of working with text. So So what we quickly learned was if we want to be successful in the marketplace, we bypass the technician and go
Hmm.
directly to the business person, not with the technical proposition, but with the business proposition.
Hmm.
When we go talk to doctors, we'd say, how would you like to study COVID? When we go talk to managers of an insurance company, we said, how would you like a card catalog so you can find things?
Hmm.
And and quite frankly, the technology we certainly have to have it, but we don't sell our technology. We sell business value. But uh, uh, the history of data warehouse, in the early days of data warehouse was directly and roundly rejected by technicians. Technicians, for a
Hmm.
variety of reasons, hated data warehouse. And so in the early days of data warehouse, we discovered that we had to talk to the marketing people in the organization. And the marketing people in the organization, they understood the
Hmm.
value of a data warehouse. And so technicians, for a variety of reasons, are very negative when it comes to new ideas and new approaches. And I come from being a technician myself. I'm
Hmm.
very I'm very sorry I have to say these words because I always thought of myself as being having one foot in business and one foot in technology. But the
Yeah.
tech now what's going to happen is that once people discover the power, the business value power, uh, uh, then the technicians will be brought screaming and dragging their
Yeah.
feet into the world.
Because if the technicians don't use the product, then the product, like the business people may buy the product, but the technicians have to eventually use it. If not, then the product will have no adoption and it'll die on the vine.
That's right. And
So,
what we tell people that we work with today is if your technical department isn't going to support you, then we will find consultants that will support it.
hmm.
And so
Okay. Have you also had to deal with data governance for unstructured data?
indirectly, yes. Indirectly, the problem with unstructured textual data is it's still in its infancy. And to me, governance is like running, and the infant is now crawling. So
Hmm.
the infant isn't going to be running anytime soon. The infant's got to grow up and mature and become a viable person. Then we can talk about running. But uh, governance is is a little bit beyond where the marketplace is
I
today.
see. And the reason I'm asking this question is because you had mentioned a few minutes ago that you're looking at like John Smiths and Abernethy and all these names, and it just made me think that this is what Europeans especially are very sensitive about is this whole data privacy, compliance rules, regulations, and
Right.
so all those things need to come into play when we are dealing with unstructured data as well.
And as part of our package at Datavox is we do offer de-identification. And
I see. Oh, okay.
you can do de-identification in your own shop so that the data you send us never has a name.
Mm.
And we had to cross that barrier. But and I got to tell you, we're not interested in spying on anybody.
Oh, of course.
We don't even care about people's
Yeah.
names. We're interested in what's being said. But we recognize the need for it, and we do have de-identification that can be done independently of anything that we do, so that you can do that kind of activity in your own organization.
Very nice. Are there some common mistakes you've seen organizations make when dealing with unstructured data quality?
I I I would prefer not to answer that question.
Okay, I was just looking for in like generic pitfalls that we should avoid, but that's fine. That's so. Let me ask you this: what are some of the emerging trends that you see in unstructured data?
Well, uh, we see that the technicians are trying to go the LLM route.
Hmm.
I don't have a lot of hope that they're ever going to get anything useful.
Hmm.
We've seen that people that open their eyes and want business value, there is a path for them. And it's just now starting. We at Datavox are just about, when I say just about, I mean we are about a week or two away from having some a real eye-opening pieces of information for the world. So the world of text and unstructured data is unexplored. It's
Hmm.
we feel like Columbus landing in the Caribbean islands, and we the first European to ever see America.
Do you have a prediction on how this space will look like in 5 years?
Uh, yeah, I think once people discover the use and value of text, it's going to be larger than anything we've ever seen. I think it's going to be the largest, but the amount of information that is
Hmm.
tied up in the form of text that isn't being used today, once people discover it, it's like discovering gold. It's like, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, look at this. And I tell you what, I don't know exactly how big text is going to get, but it has the potential to be larger than Microsoft.
Wow. Which we're talking about $3.2 trillion
Yep,
is is
yep.
that is okay, perfect. So now comes the last question I want to ask you, last couple of questions. What advice do you give to data professionals who are just starting to work with unstructured data, and what resources should they follow?
Uh, I wrote a book a while back called "Turning Text into Gold," and that would be a really good place to start. And the book is not expensive. You can read it, but it opens your eyes up to uh, two things: what are the
Hmm.
challenges and what are the rewards? And
Hmm.
so I think that would be a simple, easy way to start.
Okay, so that's a resource. And any advice for data prof other than like the following these resources? Like, how should they get started? Is there some easy onboarding? Uh,
Well, take a at Datavox within a matter of weeks, we are about to announce some publicly available tools that can be used for free, so you can try these things out and see them for yourself. And that would be a really good place to start.
that is great. I have one fun thing that I asked before we end. So we're
Yeah.
almost at the bottom. Tell us something about your life that most people don't know about, like some fun fact, things that you like to do that the world doesn't know about.
Okay, I'm looking at my time and I got to make this quick, but I started my career as a professional golfer, and
Golfer.
when I was growing up and in school, I was a very good golfer. I was
Oh,
not a great golfer. I have played with great golfers. If anybody's a golfer out there, I used to play regularly with a guy named Lee Trevino. Lee won the British Open twice, the U.S. Open twice and the
uh,
PGA, and he's beaten Jack Nicklaus and other players. And I
hmm.
used to play with him. By the way, a very nice person. But I quickly discovered I tried making a living as a golfer when I got out of college, and I quickly discovered that I should find another profession.
Mm. And that is how we've all benefited from all your pioneering work there. Thank you so much. Yeah,
Okay, I'm looking at my clock, and I'm gonna have
we
to
are done.
go.
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you so
thank
much.
you,
I really appreciate your time. This was a wonderful conversation. Take care. Have a nice
thank
day.
you, Sandeep.
See
Talk to you
you.
later.
Thanks. Bye.